Hi everybody, this is the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray and we're broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado on Blog Talk Radio. This is Local Friday, where we take a look at a local government and discuss what's going on, because one thing I haven't been seeing in a while is all politics is local, and you got to remember that. You know, these people that make their way to Congress, they generally started out locally, and that's why that phrase, that concept that all politics is local is so important, and why people in their community need to be involved with their local politics. It's extremely important if we're going to have a sustainable liberty, if we're going to have sustainable liberty for individuals within their own communities, not only knowing the issues, but knowing the political actors and involving themselves in their local public square. I mean, this is something that we have to do. All politics is local, and the best way to beat down bad progressive socialist ideas is to start at home. That's where you have your most influence. That's where you have your own most personal leverage. And the only way that we're going to be able to take back the U.S. Senate and state houses all across the United States is to have the 45% people in the United States that consider themselves conservative to actually get involved on the public square. It's not enough to just write a check. You need to get out there and be seen and be counted, knocking on doors, standing in grocery store parking lots and attending public functions, and be visible and let people know what side you're on, because people need to hear that there's others out there that aren't happy with the progressive socialist movement and the direction this country is headed. So people need to stand up proud and loud and start saying, look, we want to have less government in our lives, not more, and we're not happy with the direction this country's headed under President Obama, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that he's half black, because we don't like what President Obama is doing, because what it's doing is it's creating more government dependence, more government in our lives, and we want it to stop. We don't think it's the way we want to go. We don't think it's in keeping with the traditions of this country. And quite frankly, we think President Obama is more for socialism than he is for capitalism. And we don't like that. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with his color. We don't like his policies. That's it. But I'm telling you, my fellow lovers of liberty, that you have to get involved in order to take back this country from the progressive socialist. And again, the Gallup survey, 45% of Americans identify as conservatives, only 20% identify themselves as progressive socialists. So they are the minority. It's just that they're the vocal minority, and they're mean-spirited, and they're bullies, and they're going to say anything and everything they can to get their way. Then they're insufferable. But they are the minority. Even though they run the majority of our institutions in this country, they're the minority. And what we need is to have you and your neighbor and the rest of the people in your community that have remained silent over the years to start standing up. Start running for these offices. You're just as good as anybody else. And you're probably better than most of the people that get elected to these small town public offices. And that's where it starts. All politics is local. It doesn't get any more simpler than that to understand. Just focus on that concept. All politics is local. I mean, just think, if Illinois was able to find a decent candidate to run against Barack Obama, he wouldn't be president right now. All right? I mean, that's how important local elections are. President Obama, or then Barack Hussein Obama, when he first ran for the Illinois State Senate, if he had gotten beaten he wouldn't be president. And that's why these local races and attention to detail from its citizens are crucial to the preservation of our liberty. All right, that's a little 6-minute monologue. Let's see here. We ought to move on. Let's see. I'm trying to kill that. I have a little background music going. I'm assuming you can hear it. I've done this before. You know, this is called Spanish Guitar Best Hits Volume 2 Part 1. And I don't know if it doesn't seem like I can turn the volume up on it though. Oh, and here comes the Stones back. Having a little trouble with my Blog Talk Radio studio. God, I can't get it to shut off. Huh. Alright, well, look. Let's move on. And since this is Local Friday, generally what we do is we look over the Gunnison Country Times, or as I like to call it, the Gunnison Dead Tree News, and check out some of what's going on in Gunnison, because Gunnison represents a perfect sort of like a laboratory for us to observe and make comment. You know, it's the right size. Gunnison is the right size. Gunnison, Colorado is the right size. That it's easy to identify all of the working parts, all the components. It's easy to identify who is in the power clique, who are the government status that run all the institutions. So that's why I've kind of picked Gunnison as my observation area for local government. Plus, I know the actors, and I know a lot of people in Gunnison who leak information to me, so I have a better understanding of what is actually going on behind the scenes. So that's why I like using Gunnison as an example, so that I can find different stories and different opinion and comment and observation of my local situation, or a local situation that I'm familiar with. And hopefully that will provide insight and impetus to you to be able to look at your government with the same critical eye and understand why it is that great minds all through history have said that all politics is local. See, I have a method in my madness. Use it or lose it. It's no more. Senator Swartz, Democrat, floats idea of water efficiency measure. It sounds like a great idea to be more efficient with what you have, and you'll have it a lot longer. That's the premise behind State Senator Gail Swartz' agricultural efficiency bill, which she plans to introduce in the 2014 legislative session. This is Swartz's last session as a senator, and she pledges to make it a successful one. As part of the effort, Swartz hopes to give ranchers a reason to be more efficient with their water. Now, this is not what we're talking about here. Is about water rights. And in Colorado, the old adage is, water isn't the most important issue in the state. It's the only issue in the state. And what we have in law, it's called first in use, first in right. So if you or your family wound up on the banks of this river in the 1800s, 1900s, and started using the water for farming, ranching, agriculture, then you had a first in right, first in use right to that water. And so as long as you use that water for that use, then you have a historical and legal property right to that water, but you have to use it. And one of the things that's going on in the West is that all of these big municipalities and counties are thirsty for water, and they're looking for any source of water they can find in the West, because water is a finite resource in the West, unlike the East, where you have riparian water and you can use as much water as you want, as long as when you put it back in the stream it's as clean or cleaner than when you took it out. But in the West, you got to own the water right. So under the agriculture efficiency measure, irrigators who adopt more efficient watering systems would have their historical water rights protected, a notion that flows at odds with the Colorado's current use it or lose it water doctrine. And traditionally, ranchers who use less than their decreed amount of water risk losing the water when they go to court to sell a right or alter its use. For example, a rancher who improves a water delivery system, say through better ditch piping, and actually uses less water because of the more efficient system, stands a chance of losing out if the use of that water were to decrease. So you see, it's kind of a catch-22. As a result, there is no incentive when it comes to reducing the amount of water diverted. Swartz wants to change that by protecting ranchers' water rights when they allow the water to remain in the river. So then the ranchers would have water to sell if they're saving it, which is kind of an attractive proposal so far. This would be an individual property right. Owners who see that their reduced diversions due to efficiency could leave the water behind, and there might be a value from that to the state's in-stream flow program, Swartz told the Times. Now, the in-stream flow is an interesting concept in that it provides that nature, the fish, the ducks, all the other associated creatures that are in a mountain river, that they have a right to have X amount of water. That's what this in-stream flow is all about. And also the raptors, they have a right to water too. And that was a good addition to the law. I think that was back in the 90s. Under the state's in-stream flow program, non-consumptive rights are held by the Colorado Water Conservation Board for the minimum flows between specific points on the streamer levels. And again, that's for that's for nature. But we're going to follow this legislation because this is a big legislation, not only for Colorado, but for Kansas and Arizona, Nebraska, California, New Mexico, Mexico. So anyways, this is big legislation, and we're going to stay up on this because the legislature starts in Colorado on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the month. So they could be in session now. No, they couldn't. It'll be in session next week. And then the Colorado legislature is going to be in session for 120 days. And then they're done, unless the governor calls them back in. So we have what's called a limited legislative session. It can't go on and on and on and on. It has to end in 120 days. They have to have all their work done, including the budget, or mainly the budget. And here's some good news from Gunnison. Foreclosure numbers continue to decline. Experts predict the worst has passed for Gunnison County. Foreclosures starts in Gunnison County are at a 6-year low. Just one indicator that the housing crisis may have run its course. Let's hope so. Gunnison County reports a 48% drop in 2013 from the number of foreclosures filed in 2012. As of late Monday, only 71 foreclosure starts were filed compared to 137 in 2012. Last year's numbers of filings are closer to 81 starts in 2008 when all of the trouble began. Starts are the initial part of the foreclosure process. I didn't know that. But at any rate, that's good news. I'm glad to see some good news come out of Gunnison, because a lot of times I'm really worried for Gunnison. I mean, there were a lot of foreclosures. I mean, you would see starts, as they call them. You might see 10, 12, 15 a week, every week. And there for a while, I mean, it'd get up to 20 and 30. So that's certainly alarming. All right, let's see what else we got going on in Gunnison, Colorado. What time we got? Okay, 1:16. You're listening to Daniel Gray. I am the Trailer Park Prophet du jour, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado on Blog Talk Radio. This is Local Friday. where we preach that all politics is local. That's why we call it Loco, as in crazy, Loco Friday. Real clever little play on words. Oh, which reminds me, before we get to that, I'm going to go ahead and I want to see if I can do something I've never ever done before, and that would be to actually do a recorded commercial. I actually recorded a commercial before the show, and I wanted to see if maybe I could run it, and this will give me an opportunity to not only help the Trailer Park Prophet, who as you well know is a citizen journalist, but I have just a wonderful service. And that wonderful service is the Trailer Park Prophet Love Connection. And I wanted to see if I can, I don't know if I can find this. I just recorded it. And I wanted to share it with you today, my brand new Trailer Park Prophet Love Connection. Let me see if it's here. This would be so cool if I can play this for you. I'm going to be the happiest Trailer Park Prophet in the whole country. I'm learning more and more about the computer. I mean, even on this little $300 laptop that I run my show off of, there's any number of programs in here that, I mean, it's just phenomenal, you know? And this one, I mean, I got so many things that over the years I've downloaded, and pictures and videos, and, you know, it's kind of cool, you know, what a difference that computers have made and the internet have made in our life. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. It's like they just totally reconfigured the human experience. I mean, that's what the computer has done. It's just made everything, well, everything's like more accessible. That's what's really cool. We have a lot more accessibility to information that we never would have had before, and it makes people a lot smarter, a lot more aware. I mean, we've talked about on this show several times that the Trailer Park Prophet has been ahead of the national media on many story, and that's just because we're reporting from the internet. And I have on my Facebook page so many sources of information. I have various friends who are monitoring all of the different blogs all the time that you know, and then they share that on Facebook, and so I have like instant access to information that's out on the web, and it's before the lamestream media even gets close to it. You know, it's incredible that an individual can be sitting in their fifth wheel in Crestone, Colorado, and be privy to information that a lot of people don't have any idea of in the lamestream media. I mean, a lot of times I'm not bragging here. I'm just telling you the truth. I mean, there's a lot of times we'll do a story here on the Trailer Park Prophet, and several days later, I'll see it on Fox, or I'll see it on CNN, or Rush Limbaugh will be doing the same story, or Glenn Beck, and the Trailer Park Prophet is way ahead of the curve on a lot of these stories. And part of that is, you know, I'm willing to take some chances. I mean, there's no question about that. I'm willing to go with the story if I feel comfortable with it. And I don't know that I'm any different than one of the big boys or girls, but, you know, still, it's kind of amazing that in this day and age, because of the internet, that a citizen journalist like myself can really be on top of the news. You know, it's rather remarkable. All right, I find that the advertisement, but I'll be ready for you on Monday, because this is something that I need to do. I need to try and make a little money off of this program, And my Trailer Park Profit Love Connection is just the greatest thing on the planet. And I'm inviting you to the website. It's trailerparkprofitloveconnect.org, and you can see for yourself that I have the best dating website on the planet. And we have access to 20,000 women around the world. We have offices all over South America, all over Europe, all over Asia, and we screen the women to make sure that they don't have any kind of nefarious ideas about taking advantage of our customers. And we screen them, like I said, and a lot of these women are just really decent, wonderful people. And they're every age, every size, shape, religion, color, everything and anything that you can imagine, we have on the Trailer Park Profit Love Connection. And if you've been thinking about maybe going someplace and meeting young women, or know somebody that ought to step out of their comfort zone and meet a new woman, then remind them, tell them, inform them, say, check out the Trailer Park Profit Love Connection. It is, without a doubt, the best dating service in America. And it's been recognized by CNN, by 60 Minutes, by the New York Times as the very best dating service in America. Again, that's the trailerparkprofit.org, Trailer Park Profit loveconnection.org. You will be so happy. You will love the Prophet. You'll be saying, thank you, Prophet. I love you, Mr. Prophet. And your friends. If you introduce one of your friends to the Trailer Park Profit Love Connection, they are going to totally love you. I mean, if you want to help somebody out, or at least, let them take a look. I think that you'll find that, I think you find a lot of people will like to have a suggestion. If you were to recommend my great site to them, I think they'd see that as kind of a gift. I mean, that's how good the Trailer Park Profit Love Connection really is. All right, we got Will Shoemaker, high points worth repeating or not. I don't know. I didn't read this article. I don't think I'm going to mess around with it right now. I should have read it before the show. Sorry, I didn't get my show prep completely done. But I have a lot of other stuff that I will like to talk about. Here's an interesting story. What do you think about this? This, again, is in the Gunnison Country Times. It says, horse slaughter, will the nation accept it? A judge in Denver may finally end the national ban on horse slaughter for good or for bad, depending on their perspective. On December 13th, the 10th U.S. District Court of Appeals lifted the emergency injunction that had blocked two slaughterhouses, Valley Meat, Colorado, in Roswell, New Mexico, and Rains National Meat in Gallatin, Missouri, from killing horses for money. The lifting of the injunction, which was brought by a coalition of animal welfare groups, opens the door to legal horse slaughter within weeks. For the first time, the horse meat would be exported domestically and also would be for sale. Horse meat is not illegal, but Congress doesn't currently allocate funds to regulate it for human consumption, said Valley Meat owner Tim Sappington. Hopes will change. Sappington told Bloomberg News that he eats horse meat 3 times a week, chicken fried horse steak being his favorite dish. And I don't know, man. I have mixed feelings about this issue. Do you think horses should be allowed for human consumption, to be slaughtered for human consumption? I don't really have a problem with it personally. I guess I'd feel different about it if I had to be the one that was doing the killing. But like this guy here says, he eats horse meat all the time. And I know that other countries like France and other European countries, they regularly eat horse meat. You know, it isn't really that big of a deal, you know. It's just another livestock animal, another production animal. Montgomery says in this article, it says, I love horses, but in the drought we're in, the horses are just devastating. They make trails which turn into arroyos, which funnel the rain and carve away the land. And when those rare but ferocious drought rains come, it's total mess. When I was growing up in the 40s, the stores carried Hill's horse meat. I think no, I don't remember that. Montgomery recalls the label said for pet food only, but it had a USDA stamp, so people took it home and ate it. My mom made a wonderful salad like human fish salad like tuna human fish salad, excuse me. Like tuna fish salad with mayonnaise and onions, and we made sandwiches. Horse meat for sale at the supermarket. Is that really such a radical idea? I don't know, man. I don't have a problem, but I don't have to kill them. It says last year nearly 200,000 animals were shipped across our borders in a journey that was difficult for the horses and often brutal, but became the flesh of retired horses, can contain vaccines, antibiotics, steroids, painkillers, and other medicines unapproved for use in food animals. The European Union is planning to be more selective about the horse meat it allows to be imported for sale within its borders. Japan and Russia are on the same track. And then I mean here now look, this is happening all across the West. Logically, it is these free roaming horses that should be slaughtered. Given the changing food preferences of today's world's purchases, market prospects for clean meat from free-range horses are good. Yet, so long as the American relationship with horses remain conflicted and a powerful horse-loving lobby holds a stronger hand, sensible horse management policy may not be in the cards. And really, the point out of this is, you know, back to the water in the West and our first in use, first in right law. Basically, in the West, it's a desert. It's a high mountain desert. And horses, if I remember correctly, were never here naturally. They were brought here by the Spanish. And horses have big hooves, and they tear up the ground. And the actual eco structure of the soil in the West is very fragile, and a horse can tear up that fragile soil organism and cause, like the article said earlier, a lot of damage. And plus they poop all over the place, and they tear the hell out of grass. They're not like cows. A horse grabs the grass and tears it out of the soil. And so that plant dies and then isn't refurbishing the grass in the ensuing season. So by having all these unnative horses running around all over the wilderness in open space is a detriment to the sustainability of the soil. So would you eat horse meat? I'd give it a try. Let's see here. Talking about the college, Western State Colorado University, state lawmakers recently expressed alarm over the analysis of Western State Colorado University's financial health. Oh my God. I've been about this for a long, long time. What's happened is there's such demand in this country. Well, no, the demand is actually coming from the universities. Let me couch this a little differently. There is colleges, state colleges, have become big business, and the goal is to put seats in butts. And the millennial kids today, they want certain amenities. You know, they want more of a mall atmosphere. So they want big student centers with movie theaters and games and restaurants and stuff like that. But they also want big athletic centers where they can go and climb up walls and hang from ropes and do all the things now that kids want to do inside. And so there's a lot of competition between all these state universities to have what these millennials want, because the more kids you get in your school, the more money you have. And so Western has put itself in a situation that they've borrowed a lot of money to build all these big, huge, state-of-the-art buildings. And turns out that Western has the highest debt per student ratio than any other school in Colorado. And I'll bet you'll see these same kind of numbers in your own state, where these colleges are going into debt and paying for these structures 2.5 times over, but they're building these structures to attract more students. And like this says, Western's interim president, Brad Baca, however, says he's bewildered by concerns. That's because the study was based on a snapshot in time 2 years ago, and since the Western has been on a path of improved enrollment and overall financial standing. The study, recently prepared for the state's Joint Budget Committee, found that Western was one of the 2 schools in Colorado that scored below 0 on composite financial index scores commonly used to assess financial health. According to the findings, the scores for Western and Adams State University in Alamosa indicated a need to access institutional viability to survive. The issue was brought to light at the recent hearing before the JBC, yet the study was based on financial standing during the, let's see here, the 2011-12 fiscal year. Well, between fiscal years 2009 and 2010, Baca noted that Colorado schools were forced to respond to a cut of 26% in state support, forcing Western to dip into its reserves. Well, that cut, although I don't believe that's necessarily true, it might have been a cut in the rate of increase, but you know, all the schools had to face the same cut, so they're all being measured by the same standard. Despite relying on the fund balance to make ends meet, Western reserves have grown from $1 million in 2002 to $8 million in this fiscal year. Baca said enrollment management and marketing plans that have been rolled out since 2011, 2012 are intended in large part to improve financial health. So basically, he says we're betting on the come, putting more butts in seats. And did I tell you that Western has something like over $100 million in debt? $100 million in debt for capital construction. And so their payment on that to service that debt is around $10 million a year. And that'll be something they'll have to pay for the next 30 years. So you might want to weigh that into your equation while you analyze this report. And Mr. Baca went on to say Western has posted gains in enrollment of 2% and 4% in each of the last 2 years. In response to a decline in state support, Baca said Western is in the midst of a 5-year plan in which we're trying to move to a more tuition-dependent financial model. But And listen to this. It says that including Western and Adams, 6 out of 10 state-supported Colorado schools were reported to be in relatively weak financial health, according to the study. Quote, there were many of us who were kind of perplexed on the focus of this. So, how's the health of the college in your area, the college or university in your area? I bet they have some of the same kind of problems that Western State Colorado University has. Alright, let's see what else we got here today. In the Gunnison Country Times, aka the Gunnison Dead Tree News. Now all of a sudden my computer is just going so slow. Alright, we're going to just bug out of here. I've had enough of the Gunnison Country Times. I'm sure you have too. Alright, let's see. We're on the break, so to speak. You're listening to Daniel Gray. I am the Trailer Park Prophet, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado. On Blog Talk Radio, this is Local Friday. Oh, I know what I forgot to say. If you want, you can call in and talk to the Prophet. How about that? When was the last time you actually talked to a prophet? Well, you can do that by dialing 646-716-8506. Again, if you would like to talk to Daniel Gray, the Trailer Park Prophet, you can do that. Just dial 646-716-8506. Love to hear from you. Alright, let's move on to our next story. Oh, here's some big Duck Dynasty news. This show just cracks me up. I've never watched the show. I mean, I've seen little clips of it. But it's interesting how Duck Dynasty has gotten under the skin of the progressive socialist movement. I mean, they absolutely, positively hate these guys. So I got a scoop here from the Right Scoop. This came out yesterday, and it says that if this report is true, that the patriarch of Duck Dynasty is very upset with A&E and is planning to form his own TV production company so he can take his show to another network that is more supportive of his Christian values. In the Daily Mail, Duck Dynasty Phil Robertson may have emerged victorious from his recent spat with A&E, but the millionaire patriarch has already plotted TV network's hit show and reportedly has a plan in the works to move his family plus millions of dollars of advertising and merchandise revenue to another broadcaster. Humiliated by A&E's recent attempt to silence his conservative religious message, Robertson, whose Duck Commander business is worth an estimated $15 million, is secretly plotting to form his own TV production company so he can jump ship to a Christian channel more in keeping with his views. Now, Robinson is 67 years old, and he recently served a short suspension from the hit show after he made a homophobic and racially insensitive comments in an interview with GQ. I don't remember him saying anything racially, but a massive outpouring of support from conservative supporters, including Sarah Palin, convinced A&E to take Robinson back or risk losing their most important cash cow. I don't think it was Sarah Palin as much as it was individual viewers like you and I out there calling into A&E or emailing into them and say, hey, keep the show on, allow them freedom of speech. And that, of course, the irony here is A&E is faced with reprimanding their #1 show. Not a good thing. The Season 4 premiere of Duck Dynasty last August drew a record 11.8 million viewers, and total revenues for 2013 are estimated at $885 million. Can you imagine that? Just to look at a bunch of Louisiana swamp rats. But people like their story. These people on Duck Dynasty just seem real, and people really like that. I mean, they really want to see some wholesome programming for a change and not have to hear about gay sex and bathroom humor all the time and have people talking about sex. God, I mean, it's so ridiculous when you look at all of the major networks programming. I mean, it has to do with benign BS. But it says the public support for Phil's comments have convinced the wily businessman that he and his family could be better served elsewhere on a network more understanding of his views, such as overtly religious channels like Trinity Broadcast Corporation and the Christian Television Network. Man, I didn't even know those were out there. I mean, I guess I kind of knew. I mean, I see them when I'm surfing around. But the big interesting idea was that maybe Glenn Beck actually, well, no, I think it's true. Glenn Beck offered Duck Dynasty a place on his network. And I don't know how big Glenn Beck and his network are getting, but my understanding, they're getting really, really big. In fact, remember, Glenn Beck tried to buy Al Gore's network that Al Gore eventually sold to Al Jazeera. So Glenn Beck is really a big player in media now, and he's doing it all over the internet, or primarily over the internet and radio, and he does have some, I guess he actually does have a channel on DirecTV and a couple other places. So, I mean, he's all over the place. He is really getting to be a big thing in the media, Glenn Beck. But this is just such a curious story, this Duck Dynasty, and what happened with Phil Robinson's remarks about gays in the Bible, and it really created a firestorm. But it really, what it does is it draws out the progressive socialist, and it allows for us to see for ourselves exactly what and how these people operate, and how mean and visceral and how they're so connected. I mean, that's how they got Phil kicked off the air in the first place. It was progressive socialists calling A&E and saying that what he said was beyond the pale and that he ought to be jerked. That was the pressure that got him jerked. And then it was the pressure of you and the American people that got Phil reinstated. And really, when you think about it, this is a real interesting case study in who really does have the power in the media. And here again, it's you. You have the power. It isn't the progressive socialist statist elites that have the power. You do. Ultimately, you have the power. And you need to take it away from the progressive socialists. I guess that's a good way to look at it. Alright, let's see what time we got. Oh, okay, it's 1:44. Again, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. I am your host du jour, Daniel Gray, broadcasting from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado, on Blog Talk Radio. This is Local Friday. Thanks a lot for being here. I know you have a lot of choices for your media consumption, and I really appreciate you being here with a real, true citizen journalist, just going through the news like everyone else and trying to make sense of it and doing some commentary, hopefully the like that you're not going to hear from the lamestream media or some other source on the internet or from the airwaves or the cable or the satellite. Hopefully we give you that perspective here at the Trailer Park Prophet. Giddy up. Alright, let's see. This next story I find interesting. Only because this is one story we've been following here at the Trailer Park Prophet for quite a while. And this is actually from the CNN Justice section. And the headline here is "No Green Card, No Problem. Undocumented Immigrant Can Practice Law, Court Says." Now, I believe this is a state court. Sergio Garcia's parents brought him to the United States from Mexico nearly 2 decades ago. He's been waiting for a green card ever since. But there's one thing the undocumented immigrant no longer has to wait for. According to the California court ruling on Thursday, his law license Garcia can be admitted to the Colorado State Bar and legally practice as a lawyer there, the court ruled, even though he's not a legal citizen. The landmark case quickly caught the eye of activists on both sides of the national immigration debate. Garcia, 36, says the American dream has finally come true. With tears in my eyes, I'm happy to report I am being admitted to the bar. Thank God. He said in a Facebook post Thursday after the court's ruling, "This one is for all of you who dare to dream and by doing so change the world. Love you all. History has been made." But the case raises many questions, particularly among those who have been critical of Garcia's efforts to practice law. Quote, "How is Garcia supposed to uphold the law of the United States when he is, by his mere presence in the country, in violation of federal law?" Reasonable question. CNN contributor Ruben Naredev asked in an opinion column he wrote on the case in September, "How does the pledge to show respect for the courts of justice when for most of your life he has lived here in defiance of the rule of law? And how can he claim that he won't mislead a judge or judicial officer when living in the United States illegally requires deception on a daily basis?" I think these are all legitimate questions. California Supreme Court ruled Thursday that no state law or policy making entity should stop Garcia or others like him from obtaining a law license in the state. Immigration officials would be unlikely to pursue sanctions against an undocumented immigrant who had been living in the United States for years, had been educated in this country, and whose sole unlawful conduct was his presence in this country. The court said in a unanimous ruling written by Chief Justice Tammy Cantrell, quote, "Under these circumstances, we conclude that the fact that a undocumented immigrant's presence in the country violates federal statutes is not in itself a sufficient or persuasive basis for denying undocumented immigrants as a class admission to the state bar," the court ruled. Now, I imagine this is going to have to get challenged, but that's a really arrogant thing to say as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they're admitting that this undocumented worker, Garcia, actually violates federal law, but they don't feel that it's sufficient or a persuasive enough basis for denying an undocumented immigrant to actually receive admission to the state bar exam. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I kind of figured this is going to happen. I mean, this is going to have to wind up in the U.S. Supreme Court. No question about it, because this is a big precedent. If Garcia is allowed to practice law in the U.S. and this is upheld, and I see this court case going all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and if this case holds that Garcia, the illegal immigrant, is allowed to practice law in California, this is going to have huge ramifications for the rest of the 20-30 million undocumented illegal aliens in this country. I mean, this here is going to be one of the biggest court cases. This Garcia, remember Garcia, the attorney Garcia, because eventually you're going to see a court case of Garcia, or maybe the U.S. Supreme Court versus Garcia. And this case is going to go all the way, and believe me, we're going to hear a lot more about this Garcia case in the future. Now, to give you a little background, Garcia was born in Mexico in 1977 and taken to California by his parents when he was 17 months old, according to court documents. Now, the court's going to take into account that Garcia was 17 months old and probably was carried across the Rio Grande by his mother, or they were in the stewardship of a coyote. And so the case is going to be made that Garcia didn't have any way of refusing to break this federal law. I imagine that's going to be the standing they're going to take. But for me, it's inconsequential because his parents were here illegally. And so in my mind's eye, Garcia and his family should all be deported. Then that turns everything back to zero. And then they can start over from zero. I mean, that's how I think it should happen. And I think that's how, in the eyes of the law, as far as administrating justice even-handedly and equal protection of the law, that is the way that I think it should be handled. But I don't think that's going to be the way that Garcia's defense is going to be naturally. He remained there until 1986 when he and his parents returned to Mexico. Okay, I didn't know about this twist. 8 years later, at 17, Garcia again returned to California with his parents and without documentation through his father had obtained permanent resident status in the United States. So this changes everything now. Garcia re-entered the country at 17. So at 17, I would argue that an individual should be cognizant of the fact that crossing the border from one country to another is illegal. I mean, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to come to that conclusion. Now, that year, Garcia's father filed an immigration visa petition on his son's behalf, which federal immigration officials accepted in 1995, but 19 years later, the visa has not been granted, even though Garcia has lived in the state since 1994. So that kind of changes things a little bit also. But because the current backlog of persons of Mexican origin who are seeking immigrant visas is so large as the date of this opinion, more than 19 years after Garcia's visa petition was filed, a visa number still is not become available for Garcia, the Supreme Court ruling said. Now see, this is a nuance that kind of changes everything with this Garcia case. Except that there are provisions in the law that even though Garcia's petition for a visa was never acted upon, there is a proviso in the law that says that Garcia or somebody like Garcia has to be actively pursuing the visa petition. And by doing so, that means making regular updates to the immigration office. And there's other things Garcia could have done that would have expedited his visa petition. And my guess is he just kind of blew it off. The ruling marks the end of a lengthy legal battle for Garcia, who received a law degree from Cal Northern School of Law in 2009. That year, he passed the California bar exam. For about 2 weeks, Garcia was sworn in as an attorney. Then he received notice from the bar that his admission was in error. But this goes on and on and on and on. I'm trying to think, let's see what else is interesting here. There's another guy in Florida who has the same situation as Garcia. And here it says the immigration debate, we must separate the individual from the idea. The individual, Garcia, looks like a keeper. The idea that one who has lived most of his life outside the law can practice law is problematic. Nervardi wrote in his September column. And let's see what else here's in this article that I feel like I need to share. Well, I think that's enough. You get basically the idea. But the point and the takeaway, of course, is that this is going to be a case that goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and it's going to have profound ramifications on the 20 to 30 million illegal aliens in this country. Mark my words, my fellow lovers of liberty. Alright, this next story I got from the Associated Press. Article here written by Emily Wagster Petrus. And it says Tom Edwards grew up in a family that's been cutting trees and hauling timber in Pacific Northwest for more than a century. The Spanaway, Washington resident says he has worked as a logger since he was a kid. It's just what a able-bodied youngster was expected to do. Now at 53, with business in a slump and little money and savings, he's pessimistic about the chances of retiring. Quote, it's never going to happen. By the time I reach retirement age, there won't be any Social Security. There's not going to be any money, Edwards said. I'll do like my father did. I'll work till I die. And here's the problem I see here. I think you're going to find more and more people in the private sector realizing that they're not going to be able to retire. And what you're going to see is you're going to have two classes of people. You're going to have the people that retire from government service, and they're going to be able to retire at 55, where private people are going to have to retire or not retire at 65. And you're going to have a rich retired class, i.e. the government retired employees, and then you're going to have the private sector. I mean, there's some horrible disparity that's developing from retired government workers and the benefits they receive, and people in the private sector and their benefits and their retirement packages that they receive. And I'm telling you, man, this is going to be an issue someday when people start to realize that not only are government workers able to retire at an early age and make a lot more in retirement from the government than the private sector, plus the government workers are going to have Cadillac healthcare plans. And once the private sector people realize what's going on, when they get older and see how the government workers are living in early retirement, it's going to create a lot more resentment. And I think eventually you're going to see a blowout of the private sector, or a blow up of the private sector, and they're going to say, you know what, this is awful, this is inappropriate, this isn't fair, this isn't equal protection of the law that we're guaranteed under the Fourth Amendment. And I really think that this deal with government employees not having to pay Social Security, which they don't, and not having to pay FICA taxes, like taxes into Medicaid and Medicare, I think that's a crime against society. Because you tell people, you go, did you know government workers don't have to pay FICA taxes? A lot of people don't know that, and it makes them instantly mad. I mean, every government employee, local, state, and federal, should all have to pay into Social Security. I mean, it's a crime against humanity that government workers don't have to pay into Social Security. I mean, it is so wrong. This guy goes on to say, this article says, across the U.S., such concerns are common among blue-collar baby boomers. The 78 million Americans born between 1946 and 1964, I'm one of those people. Many have jobs that provide paltry pensions or none at all, as many companies have been moving toward less generous retirement packages in the past decade. And that's because our economy has become so fluid that it's not like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s where a person would get a job with a corporation and work there his or her entire career. People move around. And that's because corporations and businesses and our economies are so fluid. Many boomers, baby boomers, expect to work the rest of their lives because they have little cash put away for their old age, and they worry Social Security won't cover their bills. Some hope to move to jobs that are less physically demanding. The share of U.S. workers who are 55 and older is expected to continue growing. According to the Oxford Handbook of Retirement 2013, the group comprised 12.4% of the workforce in 1988. The share jumped from 18% in 2008 and is expected to be almost 25% by 2018. And the reason is the baby boomers are holding on to their jobs longer because they're afraid of what the economy holds for them. And so they're not vacating these jobs that would have been available to the generation behind them, the millennial generation and Generation X. So it's creating a backlog. And the availability of good jobs is less because the baby boomers in the private sector are concerned. They haven't made enough in their lives to have a good savings. They know that Social Security is a fraction of what the government employees get from their retirement. And it's really a human crisis. It says here, people don't have adequate earnings. Wayne told the Associated Press it's because they don't want to save. It's because they just can't. Many people don't save enough for their own retirement because they lack financial literacy skills, Wang said. Also, he said it can be incorrect to assume that people with lower incomes have more financial concerns than people with higher incomes. Psychologically, the important thing is the ratio of life earnings to wealth. How much money a person earns in a lifespan compared to how much of it she gets to keep. You know, that's an interesting dynamic to consider. It says here, for homeowners, about 50% of wealth is typically tied up in the house and other investments. While a pension accounts for about 25% of Social Security accounts for about 25%, Wang said. For people who don't own their own homes, particularly those who've worked low-income jobs, Social Security is super important, he said. Social Security is one way to pull them out of poverty. But this is a wonderful article. I'd like to share more of it with you, and it is an AP article, and you can find it at Associated Press. Again, the title, if you want to read the whole thing, is either on my Facebook page or it's on the Associated Press. The title is Retirement Unlikely for Blue-Collar Americans. All right, everybody, again, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray. I am your host du jour, broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio from beautiful, sunny Crestone, Colorado. This is Local Friday. Again, muchas gracias for being here. I know you have a lot of choices for media consumption, so the fact that you would spend it today with the Trailer Park Prophet really warms the cackles of my heart. And again, if you'd like to be on the air with the Trailer Park Prophet, you can do so. Dial 646-716-8506. Again, that's 646-716-8506 here on the Trailer Park Prophet Show. Okay, here, moving up and on, and here's I found an interesting article here for you. And this was released today from the American Thinker, article written by Andrew Thomas, and the headline is, "The global warming tipping point is near." Malcolm Gladwell's great book, The Tipping Point, presents the case that sudden seismic shifts in society can result from small events. If the right factors are present, tipping points happen when momentum toward an idea builds and finally crosses a threshold where it is evident that a major cultural change has occurred. The global warming tipping point is coming, but not the one anticipated by climate change experts. Anthropological global warming, or AGW theory, has been dominant for the past 3 decades as absolute fact in the public mind. In the last several years, however, cracks in the fortress of settled silence have appeared and public opinion has begun to shift. Increasingly alarmist predictions have failed to come to fruition. In 2004, NASA's chief scientist James Hansen authoritatively announced that there is only a 10-year window to act on AGW, presumably by transferring mass quantities of taxpayer funds to global warming causes before climate Armageddon destroys humanity. Well, that window is now shut tight, and AGW is AWOL. Al Gore, the high priestess of AGW's theory, has closed all of his alliances for climate protection field offices and laid off 90% of his staff. Contributions have all but dried up since 2008. Australia's Conservative government has severely curtailed the country's climate change initiatives and is in the process of repealing its business-killing carbon tax. A group of German scientists predicts dramatic global cooling over the next 90 years towards a new little ice age. Of course, even many low-information folks have an awareness of the record increase in Arctic sea ice, as well as the current highly publicized predicament of a cache of wealthy global warmers stuck in the high sea ice while on the cruise of the Antarctic to prove the absence of sea ice. I mean, what a classic story. Now the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, has quietly downgraded their prediction for global warming over the next 30 years in the final draft of their landmark fifth assessment report. The effect of this is that they are tacitly admitting that the computer models they have religiously relied upon for decades as proof of the AGW's theory are dead wrong. The tipping point is near. I can smell it. Amen. You know, I mean, my anecdotal experience out there is more and more people are starting to realize that global warming is a farce. And particularly since it was global warming and now it's climate change. I mean, people are, I think, are starting to sense that something's not right. And we talked about all these weather events recently, like the South Pole ice cap getting bigger and the North Pole ice cap getting bigger, and the big snowstorm that happened in North Dakota a couple of months ago, way out of season, record-setting snowfall in early fall. Now, granted, these are weather events and don't necessarily suggest that we're actually having climate change, but to be sure, they make a point in your mind that maybe all these global warming alarmists, these climate change alarmists, are kind of like Henny Penny. They're out there crying wolf. And to the average human out there, they hear these reports, they see these stories, and they can put two to two together. And I think a lot more people are starting to realize that maybe all of this climate change stuff is nothing but a boondoggle for the progressive socialist elite. Okay, what time we got here? 2:10. Oh, I like this story. This is kind of an interesting story. Do 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 ba 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 da 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 da. Okay, this story comes from ClashDaily.com with Doug Giles. I mean, this guy is one raucous dude. He's one of my Facebook friends, and you know, he has a lot of them. He has his own beautiful website here, and really, I need one of these websites. This is just totally cool. At any rate, moving on. Headline here: Secret Service leaks a look at presidents behind the facades. Now, someone someone is in big trouble right now. This story was released yesterday by the Clash Daily, and they pride themselves in being in the news or reporting the news before it's news. And these following excerpts are from a book by Ronald Kessler called In the President's Secret Service. And it shows a lovely picture of President Obama and the First Lady. She looks really pretty stunning in a chiffon dress. And here's what this Secret Service agents had to say about President Obama and President Clinton, and of course their first ladies too. This little piece here is about the Secret Service's opinion of, well, not only Barack Obama but the Clintons. It says here that Barack and Michelle Obama are Clinton all over again. Clinton hated the military and looks down on the Secret Service. He is egotistical and cunning. He looks you in the eye and appears to agree with you, but turns around and does the exact opposite. He has temper tantrums. Talking about Clinton and Obama. And it says here, she is a complete bitch who basically hates everybody who is not black, hates the military, and looks at the Secret Service as servants. And that was said about Hillary Clinton when she was in the White House. And I mean, there are a lot of stories that have been leaked from the Secret Service about how Hillary Clinton was just a turbo bitch. Now, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, the Secret Service said, are complete phonies who would portray one picture of himself to public and a very different in private, e.g. would be shown carrying his own luggage, but the suitcases were always empty. He kept empty ones just for the photo ops. He wanted people to see him as pious and a non-drinker, but he and his family drank alcohol a lot. He had disdain for the Secret Service and was very irresponsible with the football. That's the nuclear suitcase. He didn't think it was a big deal and would keep the military aides at a distance. Often did not acknowledge the presence of the Secret Service personally assigned to serve him. She mostly did her own thing, talking about Hillary. Bill and Hillary Clinton presidency was one giant party, not trustworthy. He was nice mainly because he wanted everyone to like him, but to him life is just one big game and party. Everyone knows about his sexuality. She is another phony. Speaking of Mrs. Clinton. Her personality would change the instant cameras were near. She hated with open disdain the military and the Secret Service. She was another who felt people were there to serve her. She was always trying to keep tabs on Bill Clinton. Now, in sharp contrast, Nancy and Ronald Reagan, the real deal, moral, honest, respectful, dignified. They treated the Secret Service and anyone with respect and honor. Thanked everyone all the time. He took the time to know everyone on the personal level. One favorite story was early in his presidency when he came out of his room with a pistol tucked in his hip. The agent in charge asked, "Why the pistol, Mr. President?" He replied, "In case you boys can't get the job done, I can help." It was common for him to carry a pistol when he met with Gorbachev. He had a pistol in his briefcase. That's an interesting story, to know that Reagan had a pistol with him all the time. Probably felt like he needed it. If I was president of the United States, I'd have a pistol on me all the time, better damn straight. She, meaning Mrs. Reagan, was very nice, but very protective of the president, and the Secret Service was often caught in the middle. She tried hard to control what he ate. He would say to the agent, "Come on, you gotta help me out." That's funny because Reagan would try to sneak food around Nancy, and he would use the Secret Service and the staff to help him get a hamburger or some ice cream sometimes. That's funny stuff. The Reagans drank wine during state dinners and special occasions only. Otherwise, they shunned alcohol. The Secret Service could count on one hand the times they were served wine during family dinner. For all the fake bluster of the Carters, the Reagans were the ones who lived life as genuinely moral people. Now, the Bush heir, George W. and Laura Bush, the Secret Service leaked to this author. They said that the Secret Service loved him and Laura Bush. He was also the most physically in shape, who had a very strict workout regimen. The Bushes made sure their entire administration and household staff understood that they were to respect and be considerate of the Secret Service. She was one of the nicest first ladies, if not the nicest. She never had any harsh words to say about anyone. And so the takeaway and the lesson here today for all of us lovers of liberty is that in recent memories, Democrats in the White House are smug, arrogant jerks, and Republicans are thoughtful, sensitive, empathetic of their staff. And the true measure of somebody is how they treat people in their sphere of influence that are there to serve. You know, you can judge your friends by how they treat clerks at a fast food restaurant, or how they treat a waitress, or how they treat somebody at Walmart or the gas station, because how people treat others that serve them is a true measure of their character and virtue. And obviously the Obamas and the Clintons are of poor character and virtue because they treat the people around them like servants, whereas the Republicans treat the people around them as equals. And that speaks volumes in determining the difference between conservatives and progressive socialists. That's really all you need to know. All you need to know, except for you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet live on Blog Talk Radio from beautiful, gorgeous, sunny Crestone, Colorado. This is Local Friday. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's Daniel Gray. I am your host du jour of the Trailer Park Prophet Show, and I'm happy to be here. I'm excited that New Year's is over. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I'm ready now for January. My wood stove is working beautifully. I have a new sense of found confidence and happiness. And I'm glad to be a part of this show, and I'm glad to be a part of the world community. And again, I'm just pleased as a peach orchard board that you're here spending time with the Trailer Park Prophet. It doesn't get any better than that. Oh, here's a little something from Alan West. Alan West, you might remember, is a conservative black man from Florida. He was actually a Congress member and a Republican, and he was in the military. He had a military career, and he's just truly a brilliant man. And it looks like now he has a new book coming out called The Guardian of the Republic, and it shows Alan West sitting on his Harley Davidson with his helmet in his hand, and he's dressed in a suit, and he just looks handsome as can be. But I'm telling you, this guy, Alan West, he's a thinker. He's a student of history, of politics, of the military, and he has original thoughts. This guy, Alan West, he has original thoughts. He's not just out there parroting what he's heard. He makes critical academic analysis of what's going on in the world with our country. I mean, he's really a bright guy. And he has an article today. Let's see, what's he got here? Okay, he's trying to peddle his book, and of course he has his very own website. And God, it's beautiful. And he had something here that I wanted. He had a story. I don't know where the story is. Okay, we'll move on though. I thought, oh, here we go. No, that's not it. Huh. Oh, wait, maybe this is how I gotta do it. He's talking about a recent survey. I don't remember who it's with, but it's a shock. It's a scientific survey, and it says men would rather be men. But you'll be surprised who thinks this progressive feminization is destroying Western culture. Read more. I've been trying to read more here. And I've talked about this a lot. It's the sissification of males, or as I like to say, a lot of what are politically correct, progressive, socialist, big box, one-size-fits-all, union-run school monopoly industry in America is doing is turning males into skippies. I'm not saying they're gay, I'm just saying that they're almost like neutered. That's what a skippy is. You know, he presents as sort of like a metrosexual. You know, he's not a male, he's not a female, he's a skippy. And that's what happens when you allow the progressive socialist movement to beat masculinity out of young boys. And that's why so many young boys are deciding not to go to college, because they're tired of being browbeat by the progressive socialist teachers. Okay, this says here, recently the Los Angeles Times lamented that the gender revolution has passed men by, while women have broken into fields once dominated by men, such as businesses, medicine, law. Men have remained in stereotypical male jobs. Oh no, this is terrible news for the progressives trying to re-engineer society, but it gets even worse according to Raines. In a recent survey, 51% of Americans told the Pew Research Center that children were better off if their mother was at home. Only 8% said the same about fathers. You know, which goes back to nurture and nature. How do kids turn out better? And as I've argued many times before, I prefer the two-parent system. And I think kids generally turn out better if those parents are man and woman. And I'm not coming out against having gay people adopt kids. I don't have a problem with that. But I think generally, as this survey suggests, improves, that kids just turn out better when the father goes and gets the bacon and the mother's home running the household. Say it isn't so. And what does this mean for same-sex couples raising children? I guess it's okay for lesbian couples because they got two mothers to choose from. But I'm of a mind that any household raising children is better off if they have two parents, even if they are two women or two daddies. But it took a Harvard professor, no less, to come to the conclusion that, quote, boys stick with typically masculine toys and games much more consistently than girls adhere to feminine ones. That's kind of interesting. Maybe it's because that's the way it's supposed to be. As a female, I'm personally delighted to have grown up in a generation where I can vote, own property, choose not to have a family, and choose from many different career options. However, as we wrote about women in the military, there are simply some things I will never be able to do as well as a man, and I'm totally okay with that. I never thought I would find myself enthusiastically agreeing with the uber feminist Camille Pagula, but even she recently wrote about the defense of masculine virtues. See, the pendulum has swung so far to the left that even the lefties are starting to realize that their social engineering of females and males has actually caused some detriment in our society. So this is quite a epiphany for this Camille Pagula to have and admit publicly like she is. Pagula says ignoring the biological differences between men and men is undermining Western culture. In fact, she says, quote, what you're seeing is how a civilization commits suicide. And I think probably what she's saying here is that in nature, there are the polarity of opposites naturally, like female, male. That exists in nature. And the people that are doing the social engineering in our society, in particular in our education system, they're messing with that natural balance. According to the interview Pagula gave the Wall Street Journal, this feminism of our culture is occurring because manliness is no longer valued, because progressive socialists want all the males to be skippies. She starts out by pointing to the diminished status of military service. The elite, or the entire elite class now in finance and politics and so on, none of them have military service, hardly anyone. There are a few, but there is no prestige attached to it anymore. That is a recipe for disaster, she says. These people don't think in military ways, so there's this illusion out there that people are basically nice, people are basically kind. If we're just nice and benevolent to everyone, they'll be nice to you. They literally don't have any sense of evil or criminality. And you can see this played out in people's opinions of Islam. They have become so convinced that Islam is a religion of peace that when you show them pictures of radical Islamists beheading Christians or putting their heads on stakes in the Middle East, these people, these progressive socialists can't get their mind around the evil that is Islam. I mean, it's like it says here, they literally don't have any sense of evil or criminality. They truly don't. Pagula says that the feminization indoctrination starts as early as kindergarten. And now they want to get in before kindergarten, like Head Start. I guess Head Start is kindergarten. No, Head Start. Progressive socialists, they want Head Start, which is even before kindergarten, so they can start molding these little minds of mush into progressive socialists at an age of 4 and 5. I mean, that's how deep the psychology goes into the indoctrination by the progressive socialist movement. She goes on to say primary school education is a crock. Now, this is a hardcore liberal, saying basically it's oppressive to anyone with physical energy, especially guys, she says, pointing to the most obvious example, the way many schools have cut recess. They're making a toxic environment for boys. Primarily education does everything in its power to turn boys into neuters, or as I say, skippies. You know, a couple of years ago, my boss, whom you might know, was pillared by the left when he suggested liberal progressive women and policies were neutering men. Turns out even a liberal progressive woman who voted for Obama agrees with him. Funny how that happens. Boys will be boys, men should be men, because that's the way nature and God intended it. But this is an affirmation of what I've been saying for years, that our progressive socialist public education system has been beating the masculinity out of our young boys for the last 30 years. And that's why men aren't going to college. That's why boys aren't going to college, because they've had enough. And that's why there's been that huge demographic shift from 60% of men taking up college seats in the 90s to 40% of women that went to college in the 90s. Now those two numbers have reversed. 60% of colleges today are filled with women and 40% are men, and that's a huge demographic shift. And I think it's a trivial attributable to exactly what Alan West and this liberal Pagula are saying, that our progressive socialist big box one size fits all education is scaring men away from higher education. And that means less doctors, less lawyers, less scientists. And I think that's a bad thing. I think we are, like this woman suggests, is we're basically committing suicide by these PC, progressive type teachers and attitudes against male masculinity. All right, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray. I am your host du jour, live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado. Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. This is Local Friday, where we talk about the importance of every individual in our country being involved with their local politics. All politics is loco. It's loco, man. Oh, this is kind of funny. This is from Kane TV. Herman Cain, another black conservative. He actually ran for the Republican nomination for president. I supported him. I love the Kane man. He is, by the way, black. And he's pointing out some of the statistics as of the beginning of the year. Wait, it says here 7 million signups by the end of March. Okay, Obamacare, they're hoping. This is even worse than I thought. When I read the headline, I thought that there were already 7 million people signed up for Obamacare, but I guess that's not even the case. And remember, people started signing up for Obamacare on October 1st, and everyone who didn't have Cadillac insurance, I believe, was supposed to have signed up for Obamacare by December 1st. But yet, this news account from Herman Cain says that 7 million signups by the end of March. Now remember, we have 325 million citizens in the United States, and the Obama administration has set this pretty low bar for success at 7 million signups by the end of March. That was the Obamacare target number that's been reported by virtually every major media outlet across every possible format. If you read an article by the New York Times about the ACA, that's the Affordable Care Act, you saw the 7 million figure. If you were watching MSNBC, CNN, Fox, NBC, ABC, and CBS, you saw the 7 million figure. If you read any one of the 1,000 news websites, you saw the 7 million figure. For an entire year, the administration was fine with it. Unfortunately, as the Washington Post wonderkind Ezra Klein admitted over a month ago, there's just no way they can get to 7 million enrollees anytime soon. Now it looks like the administration has realized what the rest of us have known all along. It's a target. Their target is almost certainly unattainable, so in true Obama fashion, it's time to pretend the target never existed in the first place. What red line? And this is from the Washington Times. Says the White House Health Care Advisor Phil Scirillo said Tuesday that the goal of 7 million people signing up for health care insurance by the end of March was never our target number, attempting to downplay a figure that has been circulated for months. Quote, "That was never our target number," Mr. Scirillo said on MSNBC. That was a target that was put out by the Congressional Budget Office and has become the accepted number. Blaming someone else for a target not met. Could it be that it's become the accepted number because no one from the administration ever tried to contradict it? In fact, Kathleen Sebelius, she's the head of Health and Human Service and essentially the head of Obamacare, used to be quite happy to tout 7 million signups as the Department of Health and Human Services yardstick for success. In June, Secretary of Human Services Kathleen Sebelius said that the administration was hopeful that 7 million is a realistic target. In an interview with NBC News a day before the Obamacare launch by October 1st, Ms. Sebelius said, "I think success looks like at least 7 million people having signed up by the end of March 2014. So, I mean, they're caught again. The Obama administration is caught again in another flat-footed moment of not knowing what the hell is going on with Obamacare. I mean, it's kind of comical to watch, but it's a sad comedy for sure. As always, we're forced to keep in mind that as identified by the administration, enrollments aren't necessarily an indication of the number of people who've actually purchased insurance. It only means that you selected a plan. Sebelius' measurement of achievement has always been bogus since it was never based on concrete numbers. Even with that cushion, they're failing to achieve an already flimsy set of victory conditions. And the other part, too, is, I mean, enrollment's one thing, but if you've actually paid your payment, that's another. And then the other component part of this discussion is the majority of people that have signed up for new health care coverage have been people that signed up for Medicaid. All right? That's the majority of the signups of Obamacare are people that were forced into Medicaid. More people have been signed up into Medicaid than have actually signed up for Obamacare by a factor of 3 to 1. Dems have offered Americans a mealy brown carrot of increased premiums and higher deductibles. People aren't biting because they can't keep moving their goalposts forever. They now have to employ the stick. Penalties enforced by the IRS. That should do wonders for the popularity in an election year. Because let's remember, there's going to be a penalty unless the Obama administration acts by executive order, which I think would be illegal. Not that this president cares about using executive order outside of the regular parameters of a legislative process. But once people start seeing a fine show up in their IRS documents, and they have to check whether or not they have insurance or not, and then check and pay that $85 fine or tax, as the Supreme Court ruled it to be, they're not going to be happy campers there, my fellow lovers of liberty. And since the administration has retroactively decided that their Obamacare goals never existed, they think people will have a hard time claiming they failed to meet them. It's the Obama version of succeeding. If you refuse to hold yourself to any sort of standard, you'll never be in any trouble of reaching it. Even NBC report is below. Be sure. Oh, no, that's something else. Sorry. But at any rate, man, I'll tell you, this is one of the more interesting things I ever seen in my life, this whole deal with the Obamacare rollout. You know, it has so many moving parts that people just don't get it. I mean, there was one poll I saw that a lot of people don't understand, that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act are the same thing. Now, that was a self-inflicted wound because people started calling Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act Obamacare, and Obamacare a year and a half ago was more than happy to accept the Affordable Care Act as his namesake. In fact, he was really proud of it. And so it's kind of ironic that the progressive socialist, and of course Obama is a progressive socialist, how he inadvertently shot his own foot off, because now people, the low information voters out there, they think that the Obamacare was appealed and was replaced with the Affordable Care Act or something to that point. But regardless, a lot of people are confused, and it shows. I mean, no one's signing up for Obamacare. Like, we haven't heard how successful the Obamacare was after the December 1st deadline. I mean, I haven't really seen any numbers. They're probably out there, but I haven't seen them. All right, I thought this was kind of an interesting story. I mean, we could talk about stories out there in the media all day long that involve gay people. Another, you know, I don't know. I mean, so many people now are feeling the need to come out and tell everybody that they're out of the closet. And a lot of celebrities are doing this, and I think a lot of people in public are neatly in the category of who cares. I mean, what difference does it make if some celebrity wants the world to know or their audience to know that they're gay? I mean, it makes no difference. We just want the news. We don't care what you do with your orifices. I mean, we don't. Particularly somebody who is a personality or in the news. I mean, they're two-dimensional. There's no need for the American public to know what you do with your mucous membranes. I mean, it has no bearing on your reporting or your journalism. But this is a story that has kind of a different twist. I'd see that I should tell you where the story comes from. It just comes from the Gyro, G-R-I-O. And this story's been out there for a while, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And it says when Bishop Allison Abrams, she's a woman, wed in March, she officially made her commitment to her new life partner, Bishop Diana Williams. For Abrams, it was her first same-sex relationship. She was previously married to a man, but when that ended in divorce, Abrams remarried after she fell in love with her spouse. At the time, Abrams presided over the Zion Progress Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan. She and Williams made the decision to withhold the news from the church and waited to tell close friends and family members. And it was a spiritual connection from the beginning, and we talked about continued talk. Abrams told the Gyro in a phone interview, quote, "Our paths had crossed before many times, many years ago, but we talked a lot and discussed scripture a lot and decided where we both were and what our relationship would be." Now the two women, they wed in Iowa, where gay marriage is legal. For several months, they managed to keep their relationship under wraps, but Abrams ultimately decided to share the news with her congregation in early October. God, I would have loved to have been there for that. I bet there were some gasps. Immediately after doing so, she also submitted a resignation from the church. Quote, "It was a pastoral decision. It was in the best interest of keeping the church together." Abrams said the church was embarking on its 60th year anniversary, and it was my desire to make sure the church remained together. So, I mean, I like the way she's handling this whole situation. She said some people did want me to stay and did show their support and love. Naturally, there were a few that did not. So the best thing to do would be to redesign the move on to whatever God has in store, she added. In doing so, Abrams recently decided to build her own church in Detroit that will address topics and issues she believes most traditional churches and other sermons fail to deliver. While the name of the church has not been released, it's expected to launch in the next 30 to 45 days. So, I mean, she's showing respect for the dictates of her religion, and she's being very gracious and diplomatic, not only in her treatment of her church, but how she got out of their service. I mean, I don't know, she seems like a nice person. And she says a lot of churches still have to deal with old doctrines and old mindsets. She said you have to do lots of teaching and some digesting the scripture and to understand it on another level. But anyway, it goes on to say it's just a really good article. And both of these women just seem like really nice people. And they're both being bishops and and people of the cloth, and thank God, for the Baptist Church. I mean, I think that's one thing that's not mentioned in this article, and that is that it's very few religions that allow for women to be bishops. And you would think this Baptist Church, I mean, the Baptists get the most bad rap from the progressive socialists, but here is an example of Baptists allowing women to be bishops. And not very many religions out there, in fact, none that I can think of, allow women to be in leadership roles. And certainly not the Catholic Church, and certainly not Islam. But yet the Baptists, who are continually jumped on like a trampoline by the progressive socialists, they allow for women to be in leadership positions. And for me, that speaks volumes. All right, you're listening to Daniel Gray. This is our last 15-minute segment. I am the Trailer Park Prophet. This is Blog Talk Radio, and we're broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado. This is Local Friday, and I'm ready for the weekend. I imagine you are too. Oh, and here's another take on that story I mentioned on Hump Day with the Prophet. Melissa Harris Perry, who happens to be a commentator on MSNBC. Here's a picture of her wearing tampons as earrings. She's a black woman. She's a progressive socialist, radical, and she made snarky remarks about the Romney family photo where candidate Romney had this adopted grandchild on his lap in this family photo, and it turns out this little black baby, this baby was black, and just as cute as can be, I might add. And this is pretty much an explanation of what this intolerant, racist black woman, Melissa Harris Perry, had to say about the Romneys adopting a black kid. Let me explain to you what makes you racist or selfish. If you adopt a white kid, you're a racist. For only helping out kids your own race, if you adopt a black kid, you're a racist for exploiting other racists for PR purposes. If you don't adopt anyone, you're greedy and selfish for not helping anyone else out. And that's really kind of the mindset of the progressive socialist. Everything they view politically is through the eyes or the lens of racism. So Mammy Faces says, basically, if you're white, you're a racist. Exactly. Vance Tyler says, if I breathe oxygen, I'm a racist. Exactly. And let's see, Mark Christensen says, I doubt this lady believes this shit she spouts on the station. Hell, she probably goes home and laughs her ass off at all the... Okay, I didn't mean to read that one. And I like this one guy, Ryan Kelly, says, studies show I still don't give a F-U-C-K. Me either. Let's see if there's any other interesting comments. Andrew Meyer says, I'm a racist. I despise Martians. I'm also a danger to the biosphere. I breathe air. I'm a psychopath. I support the Second Amendment and its intended use to defend the citizens of this nation from a tyrannical government. I am a horrible man. Oh, I forgot. I'm also an enemy of women's rights. Now, Richard Omley says, half the harm that is done in this world is due to people who want to feel important. They don't mean to do harm, but the harm does not interest them, or they do not see it, or they justify it because they are absorbed in the endless struggle to think well of themselves. That comes from T.S. Eliot. And Jesse Locke says, "You're a racist because I don't like myself, and calling you a racist makes me feel better." And Julian Dale says, "What if I adopt a little Chinese boy?" I don't know. Okay. Well, anyway, interesting story. I mean, if I adopted a kid, I would adopt a black kid. You know, I just always felt like there's a lot of them out there available, and a lot of them are never going to be able to get adopted and are going to age out of foster care. And if I were to adopt a kid, it would definitely be a black kid. Plus, it'd be so cool ramming around with a little black kid. I think it'd just be so cool. I would really enjoy adopting a black kid. I just think that would be the coolest thing on the planet Earth. All right, here's another bad story, and this is actually the third story that I can think of since the last show on Wednesday of black on white violence. Now, this comes from We Are the People. Group of black thugs viciously beat white couple in suspected knockout game attack. Police refused to release pictures of assailants. I think, did I report? Yeah, I reported on this Wednesday. A couple's late night stroll. Oh no, I actually think I did do this story. Anyways, this group of blacks beat up this white couple, and everyone was afraid to do anything, and so they just merely took videos and called 911 on this group of blacks beating up this black couple. And quite frankly, you can't blame the white people for not intervening in this assault, because they know darn good and well if they're white and try to break up a group of black people beating up a white person, that they're going to wind up being the next victim. And even though one of the victims, Jeannie Duche, managed to take photos that appear to show the assailant as they kicked and pummeled her boyfriend, Mark Adams, to unconsciousness, Charlottesville police still do not have any suspects. Duchette says there were other witnesses to the crime, which allegedly occurred outside the Wells Fargo building at around 1 a.m., and she and Adams walked from Miller's to Rapture, and she is baffled as to why the police aren't sharing her images more widely with people who could have seen the suspect earlier in the evening. And of course, the answer is clear, that the progressive socialist movement is leaning on the police not to release pictures because it doesn't meet the progressive socialist narrative that the evil white people are abusing blacks. I mean, this is glaringly obvious and a trend in the United States. And okay, all right, we got 6 more minutes, and I just remembered one story that I want to do before I leave you today, or otherwise I'll be disappointed in myself. And let me think. Let's see, the story that I want to do. This story comes from Brent Bozell. He has that organization, Media Matters. I think it's Media Matters. Or no, the Media Research Center. And what he does is he monitors the amount of stories on all the media outlet. And he gets a handle on what's going on with the media. And his most recent example is the attention that the mainstream media is given to the expedition ship in Antarctica that were sent there to document the reduction in the ice pack, when in fact the ice pack is growing, and this boatload of scientists got stuck on the ice. And then the first rescue ship, an icebreaker, came to rescue the scientists in their ship, and it got stranded and needed to be rescued. And so an even bigger icebreaker had to come and then send their helicopter to rescue this boat of scientists. And it's not in the lamestream media. And that's what this Brent Bozell does. And in his story, which was on Newsbusters, the Media Research Center, I think, yeah, that's his operation, Brent Bozell, he says that this story that we're talking about, I mean, even if these ship full of scientists weren't there to prove or to try to prove that the ice pack on the South Pole was reducing, even the story, regardless of the environmental side of it, is a big story. I mean, here's this boatload of scientists stranded on the ice pack, and there's these huge, massive rescue attempts, and the rescuers need to be saved. I mean, it's a big story. And he says, frozen out. 98% of stories ignore that the icebound ship was on a global warming mission. A group of climate change scientists were rescued by helicopter January 2nd after being stranded in the ice since Christmas morning, but the majority of the broadcast networks report about the ice-locked climate researchers never mention climate change. The Russian ship was stranded in the ice while a climate change research expedition, yet nearly 90% of the network news reports about the stranded researchers failed to mention their mission at all. 40 out of 41 stories, 97.5% on the network morning and evening news shows since December 25th, failed to mention that climate change had anything to do with the expedition. In fact, rather than point out the mission was to find evidence of climate change, the networks often referred to the stranded people as passengers. I heard that. Trackers, and even tourists. So the lamestream media openly lied about this case. I mean, it's bad enough they lie by omission, but when they really lie in fact, that makes it even more journalistic malpractice. Without a word about climate change or global warming. Chris Turney, the expedition leader, is a professor of climate change at the University of South Wales. According to the Turney's personal website, the purpose of the expedition is to discover and communicate the environmental changes taking place in the South. And so here's another prime example of the lamestream media lying to the American people by omission. And I just find it rather curious, and I'm sure you do too. And I got to say that it's time to go. We'll see you on Monday. Again, thanks a lot for being here. I had a wonderful time, and I appreciate you being here with me. I'm really thrilled that my audience continues to grow. And we'll see you on Monday.